So, you won't believe the crazy showdown I had with the infamous HOA Karen who's been giving me heck for the past few months. Grab a drink and get comfy, cause this story is a wild ride. It all started when I moved into my dream house, this lovely little place nestled at the edge of a peaceful suburban neighborhood. Now, let me clarify one thing right away. I'm not part of the HOA, and I never planned to be. That's where Karen enters the scene. HOA Karen, who apparently thinks that she owns the entire neighborhood, made it her mission to get me into that HOA. She would bombard my mailbox with these fancy brochures, telling me how they'd make our neighborhood the epitome of perfection. But I'd seen enough stories to know how some HOAs can be a nightmare, so I politely declined. That's when the chaos began. Karen, who lived a few houses down, suddenly declared herself the queen of the neighborhood, or at least she acted like it. She started sending me all these letters and emails, claiming I was violating the mysterious and ever-changing rules of the HOA. She'd snap pictures of my yard, my fence, and even my mailbox as if they were federal offenses. I was having none of it. I checked my property deed and I confirmed there was no HOA clause, which I made very clear to Karen. She wasn't pleased. Every minor thing turned into a war. I left my trash can out too long. Karen reported it. My mailbox was the wrong shade of beige. You guessed it, Karen reported it. I'd go about my business, and then there she was, knocking on my door, wearing her "I am the law" expression, pointing out all the things that I needed to fix. It was like living next to a walking, talking citation book. One day, she claimed my rose bushes were violating some HOA guideline, and I'd had enough. I decided to have a calm, mature conversation with her. I know, crazy, right? But it seemed like the only way to settle this nonsense. So I invited Karen over. We sat in my backyard, sipping on iced tea. I tried to reason with her, explaining that I wasn't part of the HOA and she couldn't enforce their rules on my property. She, of course, disagreed, saying something about the greater good and property values. That's when I realized that Karen wasn't just an ordinary misguided neighbor. She was a full-fledged HOA vigilante, convinced that she had a divine mandate to regulate everything. It was like dealing with the self-appointed sheriff of suburbia. But I was determined to stand my ground. I told her that I wasn't going to change a thing on my property unless it was actually against city ordinances or the law. It felt like a small victory, but it was one that gave me a bit of relief. Of course, that didn't stop Karen. She'd lurk in her garden, watching me like a hawk. If I parked my car in the wrong direction for 2 seconds too long, she'd be on the phone to the HOA, demanding my immediate expulsion from the neighborhood. She even tried to organize a neighborhood meeting to get me kicked out. It all came to a head one sunny afternoon when I spotted Karen removing some potted plants from my front porch. I couldn't believe it. She was trespassing. I stormed out, yelling for her to stop. It was like a scene from one of those cheesy action movies, but with garden tools instead of guns. We got into a heated argument right there on my porch. I called her out on trespassing, and she retaliated by claiming that my porch plants violated HOA rules. I told her that was nonsense, but she insisted that they were against the greater good or something equally absurd. That's when I decided that I'd had enough. I wasn't going to let Karen push me around anymore. I reached out to the HOA board directly and I informed them of Karen's behavior, attaching evidence of her violations, which I had been meticulously documenting for a while. To my surprise, the HOA took it seriously. They launched an investigation into Karen's actions, and I could see her furious as the board inspected her property. She couldn't have expected this twist. Sure enough, they found numerous violations on her property, from unkempt lawns to unauthorized structures. She was fined a substantial amount, and she was livid. She accused me of being a snitch, but I couldn't care less. The tables had turned, and for the first time in a long while, I had the upper hand. Karen had been so focused on enforcing her own version of suburban law that she had ignored the actual rules and regulations. She stopped harassing me after the HOA cracked down on her. It was like a massive weight had been lifted off of my shoulders. I could finally enjoy my new home without fearing for some neighbor's daily surveillance. I must say, it felt good to take her down a notch. I'm all for maintaining a pleasant neighborhood, but there's a big difference between that and being an overzealous HOA enforcer. Thankfully, Karen learned that lesson the hard way. Karen chews us out of her milkshake. I get her fired, posted by Deleted. So I used to work at this restaurant in the downtown city. Terrible job experience, but it was a job. One day, we get slammed. Usually, it's because of a game night since this burger place is right behind the baseball field, but this day was different. First of all, I was already ticked. Coworker who thought he was the manager showed up an hour late, so I had to open the entire front of the restaurant alone within 30 minutes because people were already waiting in the parking lot. Coworker shows up, I don't say a word to him. Oh well, move on with the day. Day goes on, and I come in for my shift. Soccer teams come over after a tournament. I'm talking about 100 players with a line out the door. On shifts like this, some of the kitchen staff had to drop everything and help the other front of house employees, including myself, deliver orders because we're taking orders, cleaning tables, putting orders together, delivering them, serving drinks, and I did this when I was 18, and making milkshakes. Customers were great. All of the players that came in were so nice, and we had no issues, no impatience, no complaints, nothing. Just a nice day. They tipped us nicely as well, so we really appreciated that. I should probably mention at this point that we take DoorDash orders, which is where Karen comes in. For those of you who don't know, DoorDashers are people who are paid by a customer to go get food from a restaurant and bring it to them. We get in our usual rush, and me and 3 other coworkers are obviously multitasking and rushing to keep everybody happy. DoorDash tablet goes off. I confirm it and start prepping the order. Mind you, this included a milkshake. I'm not going to go ahead and make the milkshake because God only knows when this woman's going to show up. Rest of the order's ready to go, and she shows up while we're helping other customers. Now let me tell you about this woman. By definition, a Karen. She had the typical Karen cut with the eyes of a frickin' White Walker. I'm talking bright blue eyes, obviously fake. I mean, they were the Twitter logo blue and almost solid, and they just peer into your soul in a split second. I swear, I saw the gates of hell in her eyes. So I'm just going to call her Karen. She starts getting impatient and asks me how much longer it'll be. I apologize and tell her that it won't be much longer, and I go to start the milkshake. She starts flipping out at my coworkers, and as I'm passing her to get the rest of the DoorDash order, she starts laying it on me, screaming at me because I didn't have the milkshake ready and that I was costing her tips. The woman was wearing Lululemon yoga pants and had expensive collar contacts in. She would be fine without $3. Sort of manager comes out to talk to her. Let's call him C. C comes out and explains the situation. She doesn't accept what he's saying and starts screaming in front of 200 people about how she won't get tips and how hard it is to make one milkshake. Karen gives us the typical, I want to speak to the manager, and the manager just so happens to be C. He tells her that he is the manager, and he asks her to leave, and she continues her rant, calling C a coward about 5 or 6 times. Karen finally leaves. I'm fuming about this lunatic coming in and making everyone uncomfortable, so I do a little digging. Turns out, if you go onto the tablet, you can find the previous DoorDashers who come into the restaurant to get orders. I remember the name of the customer who ordered, so I go onto the tablet to find the DoorDasher's name. I find her name and the cell phone number on the order history and information. I get into contact with the DoorDash company and explain the harassment that we endured from Karen, and I give them her name and contact number, saying that she was from a certain city. They tell me they'll look into it. They contacted me later and informed me that it was taken care of, and we never saw her again as she regularly took orders from us. We all went on our merry way and occasionally called each other cowards as our own little inside joke. Update, I feel as if we should specify this, but we also got a strongly worded email from this woman stating how ticked she was and blah blah blah, and how she mentioned that she lost her job because of it, and that she knew one of us said something. I mean, duh. You want to send me home? Sounds good, posted by Sarasil. So I was a sarcastic and easily annoyed guy in my 20s, and this often didn't help me get along with older or corporate types. I was working at a certain pumpkin-colored big box home improvement store one spring in the flooring department. It was just starting to get warm out, and the store didn't have much AC, so I was looking forward to a magical date where certain employees were allowed to switch their pants for shorts. Problem is that we had a new department manager, I'll call him Dick, who was aggressively chasing a promotion to assistant manager and then store manager. He thought that he could accomplish that by being a super by-the-book hard butt and being relentlessly metrics focused. This translated into a manager who was a know-it-all micromanaging jerk. Anyway, I'm scheduled to open at 5 a.m. one day, and on the fabled day of cooler bottom wear, and I walk in all light and airy and bare-legged. Dick, who was overnight manager the previous night, saw me and threw a fit. "Why are you out of uniform?" he asked. "Well, I'm not. I can wear shorts starting today," I proclaimed. "Not in your position in your department. Who told you that you could?" he retorted. "The employee handbook and SOP? I can show you if you don't believe me," I offered. "I know the SOP in your department doesn't get to wear shorts. That's only garden. Go home and change right now," he demanded, face getting redder from my defiance. Okay, Dick, if that's how you want to play it, I'll be back in an hour," I sighed. "Maybe the loss of an hour of pay will teach you something." So I know better. The reason I know better is because I'm one of the weirdos who actually read the entire standard operating procedure document, the employee handbook, which is actually just a subsection of the SOP, and I really hate being wrong, so I check the SOP before doing anything different day to day. In my store, the SOP was like invoking God. If the SOP said so, that won every single argument. So I go home, change into pants, but bring my shorts back to work with me. By now, Dick's shift is over, and I asked the new morning manager on duty, Darren, to meet with me. "Why, what's up?" Just an SOP issue." "Oh, okay, give me like 10 minutes. So I swung by my desk and printed out several things. 1. My latest pay stub that included my official job title and department number. 2. The company directory that listed the department names and their associated numbers. 3. The SOP that dealt with when and which departments and employees can wear shorts. And 4, the annual email from the regional VP confirming which departments could wear shorts, starting when, which also included the line, "And this letter is to be posted at the time clock between the dates of XX and Y." 5, the SOP detailing the company transportation and mileage reimbursement policy. And 6, a Google Maps route that mirrored the route that I take to and from work, with the total mileage highlighted. So I meet with Darren, and I explained what happened and handed him each page in turn as they became relevant. At the end, we agreed that I was right on every single account and asked me what I wanted. 1, I want the time. I was turned away before I could clock in, so I want to be paid starting at 5 a.m. Feel free to check the CCTV if you want to confirm when I arrived. I want the mileage because Dick sent me on essentially a company errand with my own vehicle through no fault of my own. 3, I want this letter posted at the clock like it says it's supposed to be. 4, I want you to talk to Dick about this because I told him this was the SOP before he sent me home. And 5, I'm changing back into my shorts. All of this sounds more than fair. Get the paperwork for the clock adjustment and the mileage to me today and I'll sign it. The letter mysteriously went missing from the time clock the next day, but I replaced it every day until I happened to see Dick angrily snatch it off the board and throw it away. I reported that as well, and the letter stopped going missing. He didn't talk to me much, and I was transferred to another department a month later, so all in all, win-win, I think. Too young to do my job? Okay, posted by BPD 2000. Back in my college days in the late 90s, I worked in my college's Alumni Communications Center. In reality, it's a call center where college students worked to ask the low-giving alumni for money. The college had professional folks to handle the big mega donors. I luckily wasn't a student caller, which seemed awful. I, a sophomore, was, and this was the official job title, data entry. A quick sidebar, we also had a couple of call coaches who were seniors who would monitor the callers and give them feedback on how to do a better job at asking alumni for money, typically donations in the $100 to $250 range. When callers made a call, they recorded the outcome of the call on a sheet of paper. I would then collect these sheets and then go to the sole computer in the caller center and record the data. Most of the results I entered would be no answer or left a message on a voice machine. Sometimes we got a donation. So I would enter that caller outcome into the computer and somewhere else, the alumni department would generate a donation envelope that was mailed to the alumnus, so the alumnus could mail a check back to us. Now, about 10% of the donations would be by credit card. At the end of the night, after the callers left, I would spend about 30 minutes processing the credit cards through this dial-up credit card machine. I did this without issue for 2 months, September and October. Now enters Karen, the new boss lady over the call center. She finally notices the extra 30 minutes on my timesheet each day and asks me about it sometime in late October. I tell her that I process the credit cards after everyone leaves for the night. That's how I was trained by the previous data entry person. This upsets Karen, who says I am far too young to be handling credit card information. Makes it clear that I am to stick to my job of only entering the caller's data. Period. End of story. Data entry only. No handling the money. The money is to be handled only by the grown-ups. To be perfectly clear, these were credit card numbers handwritten on a sheet of paper. Absolutely no cash money involved on my end. So, you got it, condescending Karen. I stopped processing the credit card donations. I set them in a pile at the end of the night right by the credit card machine. And with each passing night, the pile grows and grows. November ends, and this pile is now 250 pages or so thick. It also wasn't my job to ask questions like, who's processing the credit card sheets? Since the month ended and no credit cards were processed, Karen absolutely failed to hit her fundraising goals. She starts to berate the call coaches and the callers for not doing a good enough job. Karen starts spending more time in the call center watching everything and everyone like a hawk. I continue to do exactly what I was told to do. One day, she would offer a prize, like a college hat, and then the next, a long lecture about how everyone shouldn't be lazy. Over the course of December, I keep adding to the pile of unprocessed credit cards. It's a good 500 pages thick by now. Compared to the massive pile of sheets of no answers and left a message, it's not very noticeable. Naturally, someone in the alumni department has noticed that the donations coming in are down about 25% over November and December. This results in me coming back from Christmas break where I get to meet Cool Chad, the new boss dude over the call center. He asks if my job includes processing credit cards. I told him that Karen told me not to, but I was trained to process them. In fact, I'm the only one who's been trained how to process them. He says, cool, please do process the credit cards. Cool Chad asks if there are any unprocessed credit card sheets. Oh yeah, there are. Cool Chad then asked me if I could get this done over the next couple of weeks. Oh, sure, no problem. I spent several hours over a couple of Saturdays processing the credit cards. Cool Chad has the absolute best January ever in the history of the call center. The quotes are paraphrasing, it's been over 25 years. Why is Cool Chad Cool Chad? In February, Cool Chad gave me a raise from $8 an hour to $10 an hour. Thanks, Cool Chad. The HOA demands that I follow their rules, but I'm not even in the HOA. Click the video on your screen so you don't miss the fallout of this one, and I will see you there.